For a while this past week, the media has been completely focused on the passing of Senator John McCain of Arizona. As well they should be. John McCain is probably one of the most notable, recognizable, and famous figures in the American political atmosphere. He gained notoriety for objecting against Trump and also for being praised by the media for the exact same things that he was detracted by the media for in 2008. McCain's passing meant a lot of things to a lot of different people. I know there are people that are all across the country that were dancing on McCain's grave and were so excited by the fact that McCain the traitor is finally dead and he can no longer affect politics. And if you think that's the case, then I'm sorry to tell you, but you are dead wrong, especially with the way that the media has been covering all of this. But I already talked about all of that when I made my statement about McCain. But McCain's passing went through and brought up another old argument, and it's an argument that we do need to continue to have. And it's going to be an argument of how to change a structure of our electorate rather than just passing a law that says this or that. One of McCain's former constituents brought this to my attention in one of his videos, which he released before the body of John McCain was even cold. I thought about coming out and saying it to you, but I think I'm just going to let the fellow YouTuber say it for me.
Having now witnessed the third sitting senator in my adult lifetime expire in office, having refused to resign despite a physical debilitation that literally prevents them from thinking rationally, I will now forward the following query. Term limits when?
Now, the discussion of term limits for people that are in Congress ebbs and flows as time goes on, and it depends on who's in power, who's in the presidency, and who is currently holding the Congress as it sits. I'm not surprised that over the last couple of years, the idea of term limits for Congress has kind of fallen to the wayside just a little bit. But an event like this will definitely bring it right back to the forefront. McCain has been serving in the U.S. Congress for longer than I've been alive. According to his Wikipedia page, he entered the U.S. House of Representatives representing Arizona District 1 in 1983. Shortly after, he switched the houses of Congress and he began representing the entire state of Arizona through the Senate. He began his Senate career in 1987 and he held on to it right up until the day he died, just this past weekend. Now, with all of this in mind, it's really easy to see why we need to start looking at different ways for us to go and start shuffling different people out of Congress and shuffling new people in. I've said it before that I can't stand the fact that there are people who just sit in Congress from the time that they get out of college with their political science degree at age 22 and go and sit there until the day that they die. In all honesty, there's a collection of seats that are in Congress that are shuffled around every couple of years because that's how the control of Congress ebbs and flows, but for the most part, there is a collection of seats, usually about 20 to 30, that are just going to stay the same for 50 years. For the most part, when one of these seats is vacated, it's because somebody has retired or died rather than getting elected out. Try this fun exercise once if you don't believe me. Name 5 people in Congress who aren't from your district and who aren't named Elizabeth Warren, Maxine Waters, Kamala Harris, Paul Ryan, or Bernie Sanders. Now, I'm not saying that we should be taking the time and elevating anybody in Congress up to the level of rock star, the way we've done to the 5 people that I've just mentioned. Higher profile people in Congress are generally more attractive to people from the special interest groups and, in general, are more prone to corruption. I would rather the people that are in office do their work in relative anonymity, except for the people that they directly represent, and don't make major media headlines. But that's just me. But whenever you start to talk about how long somebody's been in Congress, one of the first things that you start to hear from people on social media and people on regular media is the idea of term limits for people in Congress. You start to hear the idea for people to be artificially removed from the Congress when a certain number of terms has passed. And I'll admit that I used to be completely on board with this. I thought that it would be a great way to start shuffling people around and get more people in this country a chance to work on the laws and represent the people. It would be a chance for us to get more good ideas through the Congress and take some of the ideas of the people who have been sitting there forever out of Congress. But I have since changed my mind on this. Now, I don't necessarily want people to be sitting in Congress for their careers. That's not what I'm trying to say when I say this. I'm just saying that I think that there's going to be a better way to start shuffling people out, rather than artificially limiting the amount of time that they can be there. One thing to remember about the fact that Senator McCain spent 32 years in Congress is the fact that he kept getting continually elected over and over by the people of Arizona in free, fair, and open elections. And I do have a certain personal effect to this idea as well. For almost my entire adult life, I've lived in Wisconsin House District 1. My representative has been Paul Ryan, and for almost every election that I've been able to participate in, that was one of the choices on the ballot for me to vote for. For the most part, I actually consider the job that Paul Ryan did as a representative for the people of District 1 in Wisconsin as wholeheartedly good. I think he did a great job with it. I have no complaints about Paul Ryan, the representative. I've had some things to say about Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, but we'll save that for another video. But for as long as Paul Ryan has been a representative of District 1 in Wisconsin, he's been freely elected by the people of that district. The people of the district had other options, and there's always been somebody running against him for as long as I can remember, so it's not like he's been running a completely uncontested race. And with the union influence in this area, it's not like he is running in a particularly red area. People in District 1 generally seem to like Paul Ryan, except for the ones that really, really hate him, and they're very vocal about that too. I can tell you that from experience. But that is a part of the point that I'm reaching for when I start to talk about term limits and how to effectively change the seats in Congress rather than artificially changing them. I'll actually come out and say that I'm a little bit sad that I'm seeing Paul Ryan remove himself from office through an early retirement, and I do hope that he will take some time and continue working in government, possibly in a more local seat than what he had on the federal level. But that completely goes back to what I was saying when I started talking about Senator McCain. Ryan has been primaried just about every election. He's had somebody go in and try to challenge him in a primary election to take the Republican nomination away from him, not just going up against a Democrat. And yet, every other year, term after term, he continues to get elected to this seat. It's not for a lack of challenge. And that's a lot of the same situation that John McCain is in Arizona. I don't like the fact that there are people like McCain who sit in office for 36 years. But think about the alternative if we start artificially taking some of these people out. Say we do what my original proposal was. 2 terms of Senate, 3 terms of representative, 18 years in government, and then you either have to find something else to do or seek another way to represent the people, possibly the presidency, if it may be that. So you've been in the Senate for 2 terms, and now in your district, you've got a person of your party that is completely corrupted, bought off by a special interest in your state to get something or other pushed and rammed through as hard as he can. And I'm saying this assuming that you are the senator and you're a good person. Keep that in mind. Your opposition is so far away from the center and pushes such an extremist ideology that that kind of person really doesn't have a whole lot of place in the Senate, and you really see that person as not being able to represent the interests of the majority of the people in your district. What do you do at that point? You're taking a genuinely good person who would have been elected into a seat under any other circumstance, and you're replacing him with a giant douche or a turd sandwich. A lot of this goes back to a lot of the things that I've said about our current sitting president, especially on the fact that he came in with no political experience and is going to make it okay for anybody else to run for any seat that there is. I do want to see turnover in the Congress, but I want to see it done the right way. I want to see more primary challenges. I want to see 17 people sitting on the field trying to get into the same Senate seat from one party and 17 people from the other party. And I want our society and our political structure to make it easier for people to launch campaigns and run for these seats. I think that if you start getting 34 people vying for the same seat in the same election, you're going to start seeing some really interesting debates, and you're going to start seeing a lot of ideas fly around. You're going to start seeing a lot of people that can be swayed a little bit in some of these debates as well. If you start seeing sway in the debates, you'll start to see which ideas are the good ideas and which ones are the bad ideas. And maybe the people that rise to the top will start adopting some of the other ideas that got their second place challenger to get up into the second place that there is. What we need to do is start setting up an electoral system that makes it easier for people to get their hats in the rings instead of harder for people to get their hats in the rings. And with crowdfunding, as I've mentioned on numerous occasions before, I think that's going to start being a possibility. Get some of the red tape out of there so people can work up some money from their constituents and start making it easier for them to get access. The internet and crowdfunding are going to do two huge things for this, I guarantee. As long as the crowdfunders aren't specifically trying to censor people that they don't agree with, instead just being exchangers of money as they should be. And lastly, I know that people are mad at me because I am willing to absolve John McCain in death, but I've also taken the time to realize that I can't resurrect John McCain and execute him for his crimes again. He is dead and there's nothing else that anybody can do about it. I've never said that John McCain was a good senator or good for the state of Arizona or the country at large. I'm just saying that it's God's problem now. It's God's decision to deal with John McCain as God sees fit. And I'm not saying that John McCain was also the best representative and that's why he kept getting elected. I don't know what the electoral situation was in Arizona. Up until recently, I almost never followed those races. I've been following them a little bit closer now because Arizona's become more of a swing state in our elections, but it was so consistently red when I was younger that I never thought that it was ever going to be in play again. But I also knew that it was moot because I couldn't go down there and vote for a challenger to John McCain. That was for the good people of Arizona to do. The good people of Arizona felt that John was the best decision for them. I can't answer as to why. You would have to talk to somebody who was down there. This much I can tell you about John McCain. For 5 elections to the Senate and 2 to the House of Representatives, the people of Arizona felt that he was their best choice. So maybe we should go down to Arizona and start looking at some of the people that stood up to challenge John McCain, rather than the fact that he did sit in Congress for 36 years, freely by the will of the people. What do you think about term limits, and what are some ways that you can think of to try and help get more people onto the debate stage and running for a lot of these seats out there that are going uncontested right now? I always welcome thoughtful and positive discussion in the comment section below, and especially over on Twitter. That is at EdsBlogTwitter with a 1 in place of the I. Thanks as always for listening to this show and supporting this channel. And remember, never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions.
You're always with